Hello, John. Thank you for coming back to the channel. We had a little bit of a hiatus because of the holidays, and so you're back, and we're going to be talking a lot about current events and
Yes.
your take on what's going on. But before we start, I want to remind the audience in the description of my videos with John, there are links to his website. So please click those links, go to his website, subscribe to his periodical that he has. He also does readings. So please click the link and take a look at what John has to offer you guys. Plus, he has a lot of books. It's over 50 books that he has published. So please go and purchase those books. So again, John, thank you for coming back to the channel.
Thanks, Paul. And I just also add that I am working on a rather well, it's something I do for the Michigan church. I do a quarter every quarter. I do a quarterly of prophecy, and I just did the first one for this year. Not financial quarters, but just each quarter of each new year. And I do that for the Michigan Church News, and I do it in a specific style of writing that I haven't done often for my readership. But it's what I call a Nietzschean style. You know, reading Nietzsche is really remarkable because he packs so much meaning in every word and every sentence that it'd take another guy 500 pages to get to that. So since there's so much going on so I'm doing my special Hogue Prophecy Report special on the predictions for 2024, the year of reckonings. That so because there's so much to talk about, I'm really going to get concise, prophetic, and just being bam, bam, bam. And in the way that I do with the Michigan Church News, because they can only give me 800 words, so I have to really use every word. And so I know a lot of people like the way I can go in the backstory and reflect and then get back to it. But I think just to kind of something fresh before I go back to doing that stuff, I'm going to do this one like bam, 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 just nothing but prophecies. Um, and all of us tonight, you'll get a little sample of it. So if you go to my website, hogueprophecy.com, and you can look at my samples of the last Hogue Prophecy report that I laid out, and then after the samples, there's options you can take to become a member and support this work and get. That's just the tip of the iceberg, what I give for free. And it's a lot I give for free, but there's a mountain of the whole, as icebergs are, the little part you see, there's this whole other part that the subscribers get. And so become a subscriber, just $60 if you want to take it up for a whole year. Or I have another option of automatic payments through PayPal, where you can just start an automatic payment and it can just automatically take $5 to $10 out of your bank to do this. I have a lot of people who do that through PayPal. It's really fine. And and then you don't have to worry about resubscribing or being reminded or anything like that. So $5 to $10 a month, or the full 60, which is $5 a month. And then, especially with the way this year is going, so if you so hopefully that's going to be out in a couple weeks. Towards the end of January is when I plan to get it out. So it'd be great to have you guys become members. And if you become members before we do it comes out, I will give you a free the full previous Hogue Prophecy report for free. So
Great, great.
that's my
So
pitch.
everybody, make sure everyone that's listening, just go and click the links that are below this video and all the videos that I've done with John, and go to his website.
And one other thing before I forget, I also do private readings. And since this is a new year and a very important year, this might be a great time to, I mean, a lot of the energy that happens in my readings is similar to the energy that I do in shows with Paul. I mean, it'll be a reading one-on-one with me and you, and looking at the astrology makeup, looking at even deeper in a divination tarot reading. It's about 90 minutes, and it's on YouTube, on Zoom, and um, I can literally be talking to you personally, and we will look at the patterns and things going on in the future, because this is the most significant year in human history, I'm saying. A big thing to say, but this year, 2024, is truly a year of reckonings and, shifts in destiny of the human future, and that involves us individually. So if you want to get a reading, you go to hogueprophecy.com. You'll see at the very start of the website, you'll see Hogue readings in red, and then there's a link to an email, and you just email me and put Hogue reading in the email, because I get thousands of emails. So that's how it'll be easier for me to catch your email. And then immediately, as soon as I see it, I will give you the times, the current available times for readings, and how the PayPal thing works. It's really very simple, and how you can get a free astrological chart from astro.com sent to me, so I can read you your chart, your birth chart, and your progressions, and if you want to do that too. So anyway, okay, there, I'm finally done.
So current events. So what's your take?
Oh God, where to begin? I mean, the one current event that kind of grabs me a little more personally, not that I ever met the man, but I certainly watched him a lot and cited him in my reports, and found him to be very erudite and interesting, bit volatile, but a complicated man, but a man that started last year. I said, this man is doomed to die in Ukraine, and that's Gonzalo Lira, who did die a couple uh, days ago, in a Ukrainian secret prison, and he basically clearly had been tortured before, and he had they just basically, he made his own prediction about it, that he said, if they take me back into jail, I'd probably die in prison. That's their intention. And he had health problems, and they didn't treat him very well. And his father, he's a Chilean American citizen, and the State Department was getting hundreds of letters. Even Tucker Carlson and Elon Musk were even trying to get them to do something. All they had to do, all the Biden administration had to do, is what they are supposed to do for all citizens, beyond whatever their politics are, or whether they're critical of the administration or of Ukraine. American citizens are to be protected by the consulate. And what happened is, all these letters that went, they would come up, even Gray Zone, Mr. Dan Cohen and Blumenthal would be talking to the State Department in the press conferences, and they would just, it was very clear that they just didn't give a damn about this man. And now they're saying, oh, if you need any help, just call us, and oh, we'll take care. And years of this. So another really black mark on the United States. Another sign that that our country's government does not defend its fourth estate, its journalists, whether they're citizen journalists or professional journalists. Gonzalo Lira was that. He's I consider him one of the best sources I had, especially for explaining the complexities of economics in a way that a layman like me can understand. He was funny. He was somewhat of a vulgarian sometimes. Um, I mean, one of my favorite moments was when, because he has a wife and two children who are just under 10 or around that time, and he was feeling he couldn't leave them. But I'm also a bit critical, and have been, about him sometimes, because I mean, he was like a guy who was living in a paddock full of buffaloes. you know he was living in Kharkov. He was living where the Azov fascist battalions were created, in Kharkov. He was in Nazi Ukrainian Central in a lot of ways. And he was he was in a country that clearly he was right to say only talks about democracy, but is actually a fascist state. But, I think you all could understand that if you were American living abroad in Nazi Germany and you were writing and doing radio segments in German radio that was calling Spade Adolf Hitler a spade, a effing spade, and pointing out all the reasons why he was evil and this thing was corrupt and dangerous for the future of Ukraine. Guess what's going to happen to you? A knock on the door from the SS. Well, I was just watching. I was trying to think: is Gonzalo got a death wish or something? And how is he going to? How is this going to work for him if he wants to stay with his children? I understand that, but you if you do that and you're pushing buttons of the very powerful in a non-democratic fascist state that Ukraine has descended into, you're off to the camps, baby, and your kids will never see you again. So, he kept saying he couldn't leave, but when he had been arrested and then taken for a tour in the prisons and then came out, he was desperate to get out, but it was too late. And the other thing that was happening, and it was happening, is that he had been compromised by the SBU, the secret, the KGB of Ukraine, military police and all that. And he got all of his email, his phone and computers were taken, but then they gave it back to him. And so when he was calling out to get some people to help, they were monitoring him. And what happened, as Eva Bartlett and another reporter, American reporter, that's been a really good one, that's been in country in Donbass during the civil war in Ukraine. Peterson is his name. I can't remember his first name; it escapes me at the moment. But they have corroborative evidence, as well as Scott Ritter, who's one of my other, was a military intelligence officer, U.S. Marine. It's really getting a lot of attention these days. He's been one of my sources for 25 years, I think, 20 years at least. Because he's the one that blew the whistle on in 2002, 2003. He was the one that came out and stated, because he was the head of the weapons inspectors of the United Nations, who had been years tracking down what was left of Saddam Hussein's so-called weapons of mass destruction. And he had chapter and verse all the evidence to prove that there were no weapons of mass destruction left. And even if there were chemical weapons that they hadn't found, the shelf life of chemical weapons unused, they were already duds. So, and one person got very angry in a very public dressing down by the US Senate was a certain senator from Delaware called Joe Biden. And, that kind of menacing upper tooth. Yeah, it's the same. That guy was really menacing. And of course, he just took it. He was doing those same kind of overbit smiles that were like icky and like menacing, like he was doing to the woman who was, um, the Supreme Court justice that was trying to become a justice, and she wanted to put out the point that he had been sexually, sexy at work, which was not very good. It's not the proper
That
way to
was
say it.
that was Anita Hill, right?
Anita
You're
Hill,
talking about
exactly.
Clinton, yeah,
Anita
yeah,
Hill, yes. And that's when I thought, God, he'll stop and look at it and go, yeah, you're doing it. And I was just like, God, that just, Creepy Joe was Creepy Joe before Trump called him Creepy Joe by 20 years. And now he's Demented Joe, Zombie Joe. Well, we'll get into that in a moment. I'll finish the things with Gonzalo. So anyway, what happened is Gonzalo would call somebody, and then phone a phone call would come up. It was like right after it, and one of the people he called picked it up. Another decided not to, and checked it through the phone records, and it was on an unregistered cell phone. Not, just, and what that usually is so they weren't just trying to, they were not only listening in on people like myself and others, although I was not involved in these phone calls, but all the shows that Gonzalo Lira was on. I mean, this was a classic SBU attempt to sow division over it. There was a lot of stuff that people got argued for him, against him. Classic espionage attempt to unsettle the alternative media, which has really become the media of free speech in this area. So, I mean, Scott Ritter nailed it, I think, that, and he told Gonzalo that's what he was doing. That's what I later found out. They had a talk online, and it was weird because after that happened, Gonzalo never talked about it, but he would he would just kind of started this kind of campaign, anti-campaign, bringing up all the things that Scott Ritter might have done in his past and stuff like that. It was all, so it was there was that side of Mr. Lira that I still love him, but there was definitely, he was a compromised tool of the SBU. But the at that point, it was too late. He tried to get out. The last thing he did was a bunch of tapes a few miles from the border between Hungary and Ukraine. And basically also what those, before I forget, the kind of unidentifiable phone is usually, I mean, there is a thing that is over the heads of a lot of us in the alternative media that have written a lot about Ukraine, is the Miravorets. This is the peacekeeper hit list, which a lot of us are on, that where a lot of people that have been critical of Ukraine and the regime get killed. Yeah, mostly it's in Russia and in Ukraine, but it is interesting to note that this website, the Miravorets website, is functioning in the U.S. IPs, because guess where its main source of broadcasting is from? Langley, Virginia, CIA. So, you know, Scott Ritter's on the list, a lot of people on the list. Gonzalo Lira was on the list early, and yet he still stayed in the very place where they don't have to go very far to find him. So I'm going to try to write an essay about this. I wrote the rough draft of it. I might put it in this next thing as kind of an addendum and just have something to say about it, and just kind of take it beyond the connection to something deeper. And that's if you're in dangerous work, if you're upsetting power, it's important not to sell your life away cheaply. I mean, I use the analogy of what happened, well, to one of the main reasons why the Japanese Navy and Army lost World War II is that, in my opinion, they had misread what Bushido is, the way of the warrior, of the samurai. Samurai does not give his life away cheaply. He does not run into suicide banzai attacks. He does not do what probably the most talented naval admiral, who was a promising replacement for Yamamoto during World War II, was Yamaguchi, who was, I think, the second division of fleet carriers, who died in the Battle of Midway, which was a great turning point in World War II in that theater. But he didn't die because he was killed by the Americans. I contend he died because of his misunderstanding, like many talented Japanese generals and admirals and other people, his misunderstanding of Bushido. You don't, basically, when his ship, the Hiryu, was the only one left afloat, I mean, it was under a squall of rain when all those dive bombers in 5 minutes literally changed the direction of World War II by after a whole morning of the four fleet carriers being having to dodge, just getting missed by just missing being sunk by American torpedo planes and then B-25s, and we threw everything at them. In fact, that day, I think more American planes were shot down than any other time in World War in one day. And they were like, they were moving and moving, and the problem was they had the presumption that the Americans weren't smart enough to break the codes of Japanese secret codes, and actually they had broken it, and the Americans were actually in the northwest of them, the whole three fleet carriers ready to pounce on them as they were attacking Midway to prepare it for another group of Japanese ships that were going to land, several thousand Japanese there, in an attempt to draw out the American fleet from Pearl Harbor and have a final battle and basically sink the American fleet. Now, um, the first thing that's a terrible mistake is Admiral Nagumo, very able admiral, was given two operations to do with one unit, which is dumb. You can't win that. And ironically, somebody in their war games did a what if the impossible happens and the Americans are actually to the northeast of us, and they ran the war game, and what happened is three of the carriers were sunk and one carrier survived to sink a couple of the other carriers, almost what happened. But the judge, the referee, came in and said, no, that's impossible, so he erased the whole thing. But that's just about what happened because of assumptions. And so what happened is Sahiryu came out of the wall of rain and saw three great columns of smoke coming out of the three of the four flaming carriers, his carrier being the last one surviving. So he and his planes, he had to take on all those three carriers of the Americans. So I mean, the bravery is amazing. I mean, the Tomonada, who was the commander, who was a hero of the Pearl Harbor attack, he had a hole in one of his wings from one of the attacks they made on the Yorktown, and he was losing fuel. There wasn't enough time to plug it, which means he don't worry, we'll just get in the plane and go, which meant he was never going to come back. So they all embraced him, and he led them in for the second attack on the Yorktown, which mortally wounded it. And a few of them came back, but they were going to prepare for a night attack. None of them would probably come back from that. And that's when the dive bombers found the Hiryu. And within a few minutes, it was a blazing wreck. The whole front of the whole elevator, middle elevator, center elevator, was bent upwards from an explosion. So they couldn't even see in the carrier island. They couldn't even see past it. It was just a mess. So his decision was, I'm going to go down with the ship because I'm responsible for this loss of my carrier division with Soryu and the Hiryu, Kagi. And his officers were saying, no, we need you. You're one of our best officers. This war is just starting. And but he wouldn't listen. He was just stuck in this misunderstanding of Bushido. And so the man who probably had the best chance of surviving this defeat and taking over command over Yamamoto, who really wasn't that good at this. I mean, it was a bit beyond his ability to keep it all together. But this man might have been able to, I don't know if he'd win the war for Japan, but certainly would make it a real fight. It would be like if Patton lost a battle and in North Africa, and his response was to kill himself and miss all the things that he was able to do in Normandy and save Bastogne, save the Battle of the Bulge for the Allies and all that. Well, and so I'm using this military analogy because even though it's a bit elaborate for what happened to Gonzalo, I mean, I just follow where my narrative goes. But, I would just have wondered if he could have served his freedom of speech by getting out of Ukraine before the war, or when he could have gotten out, which there was a time where he could have gotten out. Maybe he couldn't get his family out, but I mean, he was a very clever man with finances and all. I think he could have arranged to provide for his family. They weren't, I don't think, after his family, but you know, for the sake of his children, it would have been better for him to leave Ukraine. And if he wanted to, from another country, write what he writes about Ukraine, he could. But to be in Ukraine was his own self-inflicted death sentence. And so, you know, so people, especially now when a lot of people are grieving in my community of alternative media, another important point, and I don't mean to rub it in, but somebody has to say these things, and I often am saying these things that I can't help it. It's just that um, we got to learn from our mistakes. And if we can't learn from our mistakes, let's learn from Gonzalo's mistakes or my mistakes if I get bumped off or things like that that are going on in this. I mean, it's important. It's important to embrace. Well, I use an analogy that I read in Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson's amazing book written by George Ivanovich Gurdjieff. It was a great mystic of the 20th century, one of the best. He talked about in the Caucasus, there are many amazing tribes and cultures in the Caucasus Mountains, and he explored them all in his search for the truth that took him not only through the Caucasus, but all through Russia, all the way to Tibet and India and all kinds of places in the stands. And um, they're they have a kind of a wake in this one tribe in the Caucasus where when a man or woman dies, they place the body before, and all the people that love this person sit around the body and they all share. Um, they have no problem speaking ill of the dead because the people who say that's, oh, how can you speak? When I often feel, even as a kid, when people say, oh, don't stop talk bad about the dead, I say, well, why? They're dead. Where if they've gone anywhere else, they're not here anymore. How many of you who've studied your own past lives remember anybody calling you names after you were dead? You've gone on. You've moved to another reality. The cosmic ocean has created another shape of wave called you to rise and fall and rise and fall again and again until you've had enough of that and you start looking deeper into the water that's contained by the wave and discover that never incarnated. Only these shapes of identity have incarnated. If it's an evil one, a good one, a noble one, a sinning one, it's not as relevant as you might think, or the ego that's imposed upon this oceanic gift that comes in a wave every time a person's born is told to forget the water inside and just you're all about the shape of your wave. What's inside does not matter. We don't even think about it. We don't even look at it. It's ubiquitous. Well, it's the source of eternal enlightenment. Enlightenment is ubiquitous. It's all over, and it's not about good or bad. It's beyond good and evil. It's something free of both. So from that context, and I write about it in this article, my context is speak ill of the dead, like like all the people in that Caucasus tribe. They all started saying, well, Georgievich he was a sinner, he was an adulterer, he was a hypocrite, he was and they all loved him, but everybody is just saying all the things that he screwed up doing in his life. And what that does, in a way, I contend, is like what the Hindus do with burning bodies very openly, is that when you're out of a body, you're not, I mean, I've worked with the dead. I've worked with some people that were in between just dying. And it's almost like one came to me one time, and I don't seek this. I don't do anything. These things come to me. So I'm not trying to pursue this, but it happened. It happened that this was when I lived in San Pedro in a really beautiful trailer park down there that overlooked Catalina. And I I was having this strange dream that I was in this darkened bedroom and that somebody had died, and it was one of the and I could see the neighbor woman crying, and we knew them, and then and then I could see my mom was there with them, and then I woke up. I was woken up from this reverie from her footsteps walking up the porch, and she came into the bedroom and said, "Oh, so and so's died," and I said, "I know." It just came out that way. She was used to that. And she said, so I'm going to go down there again and be with her for a while. So I think I'm going off to do something. I'm at this time I'm a sannyasin. I'm wearing maroon and my beads and all of that, and I still a sannyasin, but I don't often wear those anymore. It's gotten a little deeper than that. And so I get into my Maverick, my two-door Maverick, and I'm going to do some errand, and then suddenly the person I'm suddenly overcome by this person who had died, who was attracted to me. And and what I'm seeing is it's hard to explain. It's like you become part of it. It's like, and he was saying without words, he said, I'm dreaming a very strange dream. And I don't know why I'm attracted to you, but I gotta ask this question. I'm afraid to even ask it because this dream is just not ending. I'm not waking up. Did I die? And so it would have been funny if anybody saw me doing it, but I looked to kind of the top of the windshield, the glass shield of my car, and I felt I had to say things 3 times. And so I started going, I see you, I see you, I see you. You are dead. You are dead. You are dead. And then the whole atmosphere in the car kind of went, oh. And and so I mean he was aware enough to know it had happened, and I felt absolutely helpless. What can I do for this poor suddenly disincarnate in a half dream, half reality person who doesn't? It's such a weird feeling. And maybe this will be good to remember when you all encounter death, is that all of us, is that you know yourself and you don't know yourself. You were somebody, but it's as if you never were somebody. You're in a gulf, a verge of reality. And you tend to not understand why you're magnetically attracted to this person or repelled from that person, because names and things are kind of no longer important. And identities of ego are breaking. The mental body is shattering like the water that was a shape of a wave that happened to be on the edge. Well, when that wave dies, that little droplets that has some knowing of what it's like to be the identity edge of a wave sprinkle down the water, and other waves rising take up its memories. So, so that is why people have a fragmentary memory of their past lives. Very few people have an entire life because most of the water doesn't splash on one new wave. So So there's this guy. He's literally the essence, the presence of in limbo. And I felt so helpless. So it's the only time I actually ever did that. Osho used to say it. I never really felt to do it, but he says we were really in a spot where you just don't know what to. Grab the mala, the picture of my mala. In the string of beans, we had a picture of Osho looking off this way, and grab it and go in and step away and let me come in. And so I held it, and then I felt this ocean wave of light just in his world come at him. He was Jewish. And his last thought formed statement before it carried him lovingly away was, "Oh my God, the Messiah." I mean, it's no bullshit, guys. This really happened to me. I know a lot of people are going, "What?" I go, "What?" too. But it
Well, you
happened.
know what's interesting? That you said this, sing a verse 3 times.
Yeah, I knew you would.
Well, there's the nephesh, the ruach, and the shoma,
Yeah, I
and
remember.
it's
I only later came to understand that.
so there's these different layers of the soul,
Yeah.
and the nephesh is closer to the body, while the neshama is more closer to heaven or the other world, right?
You notice how
And
I changed the tone with each, because tone, music is a higher language. Music, music is a higher language than poetry, higher language than speech. It's something I've often wondered. Why is it that very beautiful music takes me to an ecstatic state? Is it is it the music that is because it's beautiful that is making me literally like, I mean, the kind of things that overcome me with music make the sexual orgasm very minor in comparison, and because it's the whole body. I mean, I sometimes wonder, because I've noticed it and talked about by Ocean and all, that when it was so rare for women to have a true orgasm, but I mean, the way it sounds and the way I've been a witness to it in intimate interchanges with women is just a sacred. It is, and so the only thing I can see as a man that comes close to that is what music does. I literally am vibrating from head to toe in an ecstatic
well, from a
state.
Kabbalistic point of view, there are 4 different worlds.
Yeah.
Some say 5, but let's just go with 4. The lowest world, Asalus, is like our world, our plane, the
The
physical plane.
densest, yeah, the
Yeah,
densest.
yeah. All right. So this is the 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 last hay, the second hay of the tetragrammaton.
Mm.
So the vav represents, the organ, the sexual organ, the
Hmm.
2 legs,
The life
the
force.
torso, the right and the left arm.
Mm.
So in Yitzhara, that's the world of Yitzhara.
Mm.
That's where the angels sing.
Mm.
So during prayer, during especially chakras, right? So there is the performance of the sacrifices and the burning of the sacrifices. That represents the cleansing of the lower world. And then there are prayers that are said that are more um, the songs of angels throughout chakras,
Hmm.
right? And then it's the pre-blessing and the blessing, the Shema,
Yeah.
which would be
The
this
more.
upper level, which would be more like understanding.
Yeah.
And then when you have the silent
Understanding.
prayer, the silent prayer, which is the Amida, that um, that represents like wisdom, but wisdom from a Kabbalistic point of view is like a spark,
Yeah.
and you need understanding to expand it. So
Yes.
it's a spark of understanding. So when
It's
you're
very
talking
high and
about singing,
beautiful,
yeah.
the
So
Kabbalah.
there is this, So there is this.
Very high.
I'll tell you that when
Yeah.
when you're talking about real scholars in the Kabbalistic works going centuries back,
Yes.
their intelligence level was in the 200s,
Yeah.
250 range. I mean, it was really high. All right. You know, this so yeah, it,
Well, it's paralleled in Hindu. There are the 4 states. The fourth is just called the Turiya because it cannot be expressed. And ironically enough, I'll show you say, because he used to run 6 miles a day at one point of his life in bamboo sandals, snap, 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 snap. and and so he speaks from experience, and he said, you know, that people who have the runner's high, they probably aren't aware of it, but sometimes in the runner's high, you are in the fourth. And when I was running every 3 times a week for 20 years, um, and I was running around Green Lake in Seattle, um, I used to I used to do it in dark in the night when there weren't a lot of people on it, because if I started having this kind of fourth state come over me, it was like this expansion, and I'm running and I'm not even looking at the road. I'm running like this. But I see the road. I am the road, and the feet falls upon it. Everything becomes harmony, and everything, the dense world is uplifted. It becomes the lotus paradise, and the Buddha is running, and the Buddha is not for a moment pretending not to be the Buddha,
Well,
as the society wants.
what's interesting is in the Amida, all right, so in this higher world that you're talking about, I believe it's 18 different blessings that are said during chakras. And I believe it's 13 during Marav and Mincha. All right. But when you're in chakras, when you're reading all this, what's really weird, you can be saying, because you say it 3 times a day, if you're Orthodox, right?
Mhm.
So, you're saying it over 1,000 times a year. Very few Jews can tell you in the middle of chakra, during chakras, the middle of the Amida, what it's saying, even though they're reading it 1,000 times, because it's this phenomena you're talking about. You are doing it, but then all of a sudden you are elevated beyond this physical plane, and you're in the motion physically, but you're mentally beyond. It's hard to describe this,
Yeah,
but other than like running and like not remembering like you ran it, obviously you ran it, but your mind is thinking. You're thinking. It's
yeah.
just that it's not in the same context, or it's not in the same vocabulary
Not
as this plane.
egocentric. Yeah, it is the nothing, when people say, I'm gonna drop my ego, no, that's the ego trying to drop itself. You can't drop the ego, but you can understand how the ego has been made rather than a tool of living in this world. It is been turned into a chain and ball of identities that you drag along, as a beast of burden, a camel, in this world. And it requires a rebellion. That rebellion is usually given a negative connotation, but I have not seen any mystic of any great import that changed the world, or lesser known who all changed the hearts of a few. But if they're authentic, they always rebel and question hard, rock solid dogmas. And if that had not been true, then it's like what happened when I probably told this story before, but where I was on Coast to Coast, and there I was explaining some things, and there was a Christian listening to me on the phone call. And he said, "Well, this all sounds very interesting. I don't know, sounds amazing, but I think I'm just going to hold on to my faith and do what my faith, as I understand it, wants me to do." And then suddenly, again, from a state where I'm not thinking but watching my mind suddenly talking uh, very clearly, I suddenly watch myself say, "Aren't you lucky? Aren't you lucky that Jesus Christ, when faced with the Sanhedrin and the things he was opening up to, he didn't turn away from the things that were opening to him and say, you know what? I think I'm just going to follow the Sanhedrin's dogma as they interpret it. and not make waves and just wait for things to happen and trust that God will show me the way. And I said to him, how lucky you are that your master was a rebel. And the message is, be a rebel. Question, ask. You're not out to destroy anyone or any dogma. And if any dogma is worth its weight in gold of truth, questioning it cannot harm it. Only the false suppresses. If false dogmas cannot tolerate false politics, as we're seeing so well, the false freedom of press of our media. I mean, the fact that, when I look at one of the biggest frauds in American history, the 2020 elections, and I didn't vote for Trump. So let's get clear about that. This is not a Trump versus Biden issue for me. I predicted it was going to happen. Unfortunately, it did happen. And I don't know if we're going to recover from it in this coming election unless there's a reckoning where we have to face it. But, I've said before that one of the things that if people believe the election was truly done, if the people in command of looking over the election say that nothing wrong happened, then why does their behavior in response to this criticism prove that something did happen? If it were me, when people want to challenge me on what I'm saying and the sources, I'm happy. Yes, let me show you. Let me explain. Here's the sources. See for yourself. I am never like, no, shut up. I don't want you to bother me anymore. I don't cancel culture people. The people who cancel something out have something to hide. And there's a lot of hiding in this government that there was a lot of fraud going on. You cannot have an election in 2020 that had more people voting than were even registered in the United States. Try to explain that one to me. No, shut up. We're going to ban you off Facebook. We're going to do this. No, we don't. People who cancel people are liars, are lost in an unholy place. They're not, and if it's a dogma, if it's an institution that does this, then it has a sickness that needs healing and exposure. But you don't fix Nazism in Ukraine by sitting in the very heartbeat, the very hearth of some of its most virulent fascist organizations. And you're not going to be around for your kids. So back to Caucasus. These things speak ill of the dead because why? Why do they say it's a good thing? Because just like the Indians burning bodies, when you're in that limbo space like that man was, you're attracted. What's happening? Oh, that's me laying there with all the wrapped up, except I see the face. I'm pulled to this person. Am I this person? Maybe I was. Oh my God, they're burning me. Oh my God, I'm seeing my face melt off my skull. Oh, I don't want to be here anymore. On you go to the next incarnation. You hover around this room in the Caucasus. You kind of think you know all these people. You're certainly pulled to them, and they're all speaking ill of you. I got to get out of here. I got to even drop what they're saying because it doesn't matter anymore. I'm dead. And all those things are gone, and now I get another chance. I get another Groundhog's Day. I mean, the spiritual significance of that wonderful comedy of Bill Murray, Groundhog's Day, is really a study in reincarnation lessons. Okay, everything went bad. He goes to bed and he wakes up. The clock goes to 6, and then dee 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 dee, babe, do 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 do, I love you, babe. It goes again, Sonny and Cher. Starts all over again. Whatever you did, it's gone like a nightmare or a happy dream. You wake up. And so he was like, must have been doing it thousands of times. He finally got this whole shtick going where he managed to help people, help himself, get it all done. And then he finally was real with the lady he was falling in love with and was not the kind of egoistic bullshit artist that he was playing. And then they're cuddling in the bed and they fall asleep. They're not making love, they're just cuddling like innocent children. It's really beautiful. And then the thing flips. Babe, I love you, babe. And things have changed. And now he can move forward again. It doesn't start with the same things which he anticipates. He got it right. And so it's a beautiful metaphor of what reincarnation is trying to say is you keep coming back. It's always a new start. The profoundest first steps are usually what get us trapped again because the society is unaware of these things and in its unconscious, well-meaning ways wants to dump all this garbage on us, which they think is very valuable. And without it, we can't survive in the world. And they're not really wrong because innocence can't survive in this world because it's a world of ego. So innocence has to sometimes take up survival mechanisms. And actually, in some of the readings, what I do is a lot of things I help people with is going in and seeing the voice. I ask them, what's the voice of this way, your survival mechanism? Well, it sounds like my mother. It sounds like my father or my brother, my priest. I said, yeah, don't do anything about it. Just allow it to be there and be a witness of it. So the biggest problem is you can't, doing is not going to solve anything in my experience. Understanding solves everything. It just makes it irrelevant. And there's a quality of indifference, in emphasized, indifference, I would call it, because most people, when they think of indifference, they go, okay, what you're saying, I should not either be for it or against it. And a lot of people then fall into the trap of how they equate indifference to passive aggression. So I have to say, no, the way you're saying it is just, I'm indifferent. No, I'm indifferent. No, that's not neutral. That's I don't want this. and and so we look at that, and it's all very playful. The whole existence, as the Hindus call it, is a great play called Leela. And so the universes rise and fall, and World War III's happen, and then new worlds happen, um, and then there's something higher than merely making the world right, opposed to the world being wrong, because right cannot exist without wrong. This other thing, Bind, that we get into with our programming is that we ought to seek this kind of beautiful, happy ending in an existence that is eternally forever. Endings are illusions. They do not exist except in our attempts to dream them into reality. And that hurts us because we never find an end. And so that a lot of our pain is caused by that. But if you have an understanding that you can't begin a thing or end a thing, you are the thing. And it's not a mental construct. Now, a lot of meditation techniques that Osho taught me are also in my readings, I talk about them. And usually in my readings, if people are resonating with what I'm saying, I'll ask them if they want me to send after the reading an email which is set up with all the links and information for them to then pursue looking at these meditation techniques. Now, certainly there are a lot of great meditation techniques that I don't know, but I try as best I can never to say or do anything that is not my experience. And these meditations I know from since 1980. I have been doing them since I was initiated by Osho in 1980 in Pune, India. So I can share what I know, what I've experienced, and so I share these because if people find in my presence a certain something, uh, beyond that I'm a crazy old wizard. It's if you resonate with it, then take a chance and see what these can do for you. Maybe they do nothing. It's all right. There's nothing wrong. The path is a path of yes. Even no is said yes to. Even no is allowed for its no. Say yes to no as well. Otherwise, how can your yes have any value? So, my saying no to the mistakes of Gonzalo Lira are as much a lesson for me as it is for all of you. It is not ill of the dead to speak of mistakes. It is not ill to yourself to not face sometimes the things you've done wrong. And you might discover something in the moment. Like, for instance, let's say you have a situation where you find yourself exposed to a hypocrisy that you never thought you were, and it's painful. But if you can do this effortless effort of simply being a witness to your life, like it's a movie, just a witness, truly neither for nor against. Whenever a thought comes up, let it come up. The moment you try to judge it or control it, you lose the magic of witnessing. Do not assess, do not try to reason what the thought is. Simply let it come up and witness it doing nothing. If you just each moment with each breath keep doing that, the thoughts start to disappear. The deeper layer is where, so thoughts are the first layer, the easiest layer. The more challenging layer is to just be with moods, be with feelings, sufferings and blisses. These are more profound, deeper parts of the subtle mind. Just be with them, feel them, but be a witness. They will become more vivid, actually, if you are not attached to them. Then comes a deeper layer, the me separate from the whole that's all around me. And you watch this feeling of being separate from everything. The very core of what the word idiot means. Idios means under the illusion. Watch the illusion of feeling that you're separate from everything and everybody. Because you're not. That's the hypothesis. Don't believe it or disbelieve it. Remember, non for or against means put your beliefs and your disbeliefs equally in neutral. Just be with it, waiting, watching. And then what starts to happen, you become aware of something that is not separate. Nothingness becomes no thingness. You're not separate. You are everything. You are the universe. You are the whole. Osho, my teacher, used to say, that is the great sunrise of the ego. Oh, no, sunrise of the soul. The sunrise of the soul. It is the strange thing is you can never become enlightened because you are enlightenment. So you can miss it, like the fish who gets looking for the ocean. I'm part of this ocean they keep telling me about it. I can't see the ocean anywhere. Well, you are it. You won't see it. You will never see your ultimate truth because you are it. But anything that you experience outside of it, no matter how beautiful, positive, negative, enjoy it. Enjoy the show, but the ultimate core of it all, the source of it all, is the same for every being that has the potential sentience. The source is exactly the same for everyone, always new and always eternally changing, always not changing, and not even doing that. This gets very difficult to talk about terms of dialectics because dialectics are outside of it. That's why the mind can never understand this. The mind tries so hard to understand this. It's like people say, what, you think you're enlightened? You've become enlightened? I said, I don't know if enlightenment can become. Can it become? If it becomes, it's a thing of the phenomenal world. Maybe enlightenment is the screen where all the becoming is playing and non-becoming. So so I wish for Gonzalo peace and a better life, a new start, a new Groundhog's Day. But it is good not, it is false to be afraid of speaking ill about the dead. I know that when I die, there's a lot of people who are going to speak ill about me. Let them. Maybe they'll learn from my mistakes. At least I could help that way. Because as far as I can see as a meditator all these years, I am every sin and every mess that there is. I am the world, and the world is me. I am Hitler, I am Satan, I am God, I am Christ. And everything in between. In that play of things, the source, all these things come up. So yeah, it's fault, of course, it changes the gestalt, the way you perceive things, and then you're not afraid of criticism. You're not trying to protect yourself by putting on a persona that's not real. And you're always afraid, the ego's always afraid of being exposed because it is phony. And I did some really hard encounter groups in India in 1980 where I really got confronted with that. And I actually wish those groups were available for the world, because I've talked about it before on the show. Those I think if the world could do one of the super groups I did in the Osho ashram in 1980, if for 3 weeks people all over the world were able to pass through what I passed through, I think there would be no more wars. We would all have a, a revelation in that we are all equally unique, not equal. That's impossible. There's nobody that's equal. That's it was a well-meant first stage of the Aquarian Age that Jefferson and the founding fathers said something quite revolutionary for those times. All people, all men, unfortunately, just men, were created equal. Good start. When people go, oh, not the men, it's about why they don't get into that. Understand the positive of it. That was a baby step. What do you spank the baby when when it learns how to make its first steps? It's not running a marathon. Let the kid grow up. Love it. It's not the whole truth, but encourage more to come out, more opening the dirt dam to allow more fresh water and more fresh water, because what society does is it dams us up and our water of life becomes stale. So it's good. Break the dam, let things flow. Understand that more things will come. That was the first instance of the Aquarian Age. It's taken all these one cycle of Pluto's orbit ending now for the new idea, a deeper understanding of all men are created equal. Now we're saying all people are created equal, all races are created equal. So it's grown, it's evolved, and now the next stage is coming through the crisis that we're entering, is where we'll come out of this birth travail saying all of us are created equally unique. Our uniqueness is what we share. Our difference is what we share. And this is very naturally in harmony with, if you open your eyes and your ears and your heart, you can see that the whole existence never repeats itself. There's no leaf that's exactly the same. In the infinite trillions and quintillions of leaves, of trees, of blades of grass, of animals, of stars, existence is full of equal uniqueness. The whole thing is equally unique. And so um, when that's understood, then one can accept one's faults, see them in a different alchemical way. Our faults are opportunities to transmute base metals into gold. You know, the devil, as I've said before on the show, the devil and the divine have the same root source in Indo-European languages, the sources of the Hindu languages and the languages in Europe. Devil is divine. The devil's trying to become divine. You don't throw him into a lake of fire. That's worse than being a devil, frankly. In my view, I don't see anyone who's sinned enough to spend eternity burning. Have you ever been burned? Imagine if those of you who have had burns, imagine that forever. What kind of a sadistic, evil thing would want to do that to people? Even Adolf Hitler doesn't deserve maybe a second or two. That might wake him up. But I never throw him into because I am Adolf Hitler, and so are you. He just happened to be a more crystallized version of it. We're all like that. We're also the Buddha, the Christ. We're also the Kabbalist, the holy Kabbalist. We're all of it. So it's great to understand that, because then it brings compassion and patience. It brings a illumination into what's behind a lot of the things we do in our lives and what other people do to us. And I apply a lot of that into my work about reading the future. And maybe we should now move to what's going to happen in this year of reckoning, a little preview. Let's see, what time is it? Okay. I'm going to be a little shorter today than I usually am, because I'm in the middle of I'm having a pitcher's or hitter's streak right now in my writing. I am doing the last 600 quatrains of Nostradamus, updating them, and in a few months I will have crossed a milestone that I've been on for 3 years, trying to update everything I wrote in Nostradamus: The Complete Prophecies 25 plus years ago. And it's been so much fun, because now, because of open sources, because basically libraries are online, um, I'm able to find things that in 1995 I couldn't find, because the technology was book burdened and driving to libraries, and so a lot of mysteries I've been solving, and I've just been having so much fun. And this is going to be such an amazing project when it's done, and it'll be released. First volume be 2026, and 2027, and 2028. And so, and it will be the ultimate, I would say, I would even argue that it's the last word on Nostradamus. I don't think anybody will be crazy enough to do it again. There were only 4 of us in the last 4.6 centuries that actually attempted trying to write all of the Nostradamus works: Henry C. Roberts, Edgar Leone, me, and Mario Reading. All of those 3 men have passed on, Mario most recently. And I'm the last one standing. And so I am going to do what technologies didn't allow them to do. I now can do it, and that is do all the prophecies people know about: the 942 quatrains and the 2 great prophetic letters, the epistle to Henry II, and these stream of consciousness prophetic letters that basically halfway in the sentence he'll jump a century and come back, and it's it's quite an acid trip to translate what Nostradamus is doing in his prose prophecies. And the vast majority of his prophecies in his entire life were prose prophecies. And most of you have not seen them and they're literally like half of his work that no one's seen yet, or seen in English, or seen translated. And I'm doing that. I'm translating all of his almanacs, all of his almanac prose prophecies, many of his pamphlets and articles, his Horus Apollo on Egyptian hieroglyphs, things that, so when it takes 3 volumes of at least 700, 800 pages a piece to make this work. So it's literally going to be over 1,000,000 words, 2,250 pages in 3 volumes, roughly around that. And I'm just a month or so away, maybe by spring, of the major milestone in this work of actually getting all the primary prophecies down and updated, all the prose prophecies, and I'm going to start the others, the almanacs, which won't be, I hope, as big a burden, because a lot of it's really about 16th century news. And so, although I've been reading very much in deep detail about a lot of intimate details of 16th century news from 1550 to 1567, even now with open sources, I'm actually able to find weather reports. I'm getting a good understanding of what the weather was like, and that was important. It's one of the reasons why he was kind of the creator of almanacs, because the weather was getting unstable from a cold side. I mean, Nostradamus lived during the Little Ice Age. And there was a little burst of it in the 1520s and 30s, and then it got warm again. And then by the end of the 1550s into the 60s, the Little Ice Age came back with a vengeance all through the rest of the 16th century into the 17th century, and a little farther beyond that. So that's kind of the Little Ice Age is really the main creator of the genre of the almanac, the farmer's almanac, and all that. And he was one of the first to create them. So anyway, as I usually go all over the place, now 2024, the year of reckoning, reckonings in plural, many things. Or I could call it the something's gotta give year. And that means in 2 ways. Give as in break, and give as in give something new. Something that with the astrology that's beginning to move Pluto more in under the influence, less in the influence of Capricorn, the establishment, and more in the interest of revolutions against the establishment, Aquarius, humanitarian, equally unique, all these things. And now the good news is that this year is kind of it's the end of the 7 passes. October of this year will be the 7th pass of Pluto over its natal position in Capricorn, 27 degrees, when the United States was born. So in astrology, an era doesn't change just on the click of a second on your dial. It takes there's a twilight period. Um, the Pluto began to pass over its natal position in 2021, and it finishes it at the end of this year, 2024. And then there's a little in 2025 and 6, there's a little like it comes close to coming over it, but that's also important because now this whole end and beginning thing that we're all feeling, it's like we're coming to some great age ending and beginning, and a lot of things that were our world. Lenin said it once. I'm probably going to butcher the quote, but I have it in my writing. Lenin said in 1914, when World War I started, and before he was involved in the Bolshevik Revolution, he said, sometimes history doesn't change for centuries, and other times history changes in months, weeks, centuries. All right, centuries of change happen in months, weeks, and we're in that. This is a big, big. Every time we wake up, world changes, and some kind of incredible, unexpected things happen. For instance, The only people that actually declared war against the Zionist genocide of the Palestinians and putting their lives on the line, and only will keep fighting until there's a ceasefire, and then they'll stop fighting because all they're doing is trying to stop the genocide. And the way they have a power to do it is to seize boats owned by Israel in the Red Sea. I'm speaking of the Ansarallah Houthis. Now, they prefer to be called Ansarallah. Don't remember the moment what that means in Arabic, but some of you do. But it's the reason why they're called Houthis is because their founder, his full name, but he was like of Houthi, al-Houthi. And so the West kind of picked up on that. And now I think it's almost like Houthi and the Blowfish, it's like it's it definitely so I try to, whoever people are, I try to say their names properly. And so Ansarallah, which has something of God involved in it, place of God, or I don't know. It's like Hezbollah means party of God or house of God, or anyway. Today I'm just not good at this. I've been overly quatraining, and my brain is not picking those things up. But anyway, um, here's all these people. Even the name Operation, it's like commerce or good commerce, or I don't know. Basically, the name of the operation of the United States Navy, the Coalition of Willing, only consisting of a little British flotilla and all those lonely Americans. And everybody else is backed away. All the Europeans, everybody backed away. So I mean, talk about a coalition of willy-nilly. It's much smaller than anything that happened in the aggressive war that the Bush administration committed, a war crime, unilateral aggressive war against Iraq on erroneous weapons of mass destruction didn't exist. And when told by Scott Ritter and other of his people to prove it, they ignored it and went ahead. But that is really one of the karmic things that's coming to a reckoning now. Our behavior in the Middle East it's not just about Israel. We are the enablers of the Zionists. We are part and parcel part of this genocide. And isn't it amazing that this is one of the unusual things about our times? Isn't it amazing that out of the blue, South Africa goes to the court that is really the court that prosecutes justice in international law for the United Nations, much better than the court that's been going after Milosevic and all those people during the Balkan times and stuff. That's very politicized. This court is not so easily politicized. I can't think of the acronym for it, but the isn't it an interesting karmic thing that South Africa, when it was an apartheid state, literally Israel used it secretly to create its atomic weapons program, that even when South Africa was a pariah state for its apartheid, Israel was making the police uniforms, the guns, the armored personnel carriers to persecute Black and colored people in South Africa. And it's a strange thing. I don't know if the people who are doing this are even thinking about this, but it just seems right in the action reaction of karma that the people that have stepped up and officially asked for a trial of genocide against the current Israeli government are the people that know something about apartheid, because Israel has become, under the Zionists, has become an apartheid state where, I won't go beyond that. I've talked about that a lot on this show, but that's the connection. And where everybody's so angry about, oh, you're upsetting our commerce and all that, I can say, hey, but these Ansarallah people, they're the only people who are putting their lives on the line to stop the genocide that's going on. And so it's amazing to see how the West is ganging up on them and now bombing them and all that. Why don't you just stop? Why don't you just have a ceasefire? Hmm? Why don't you talk this way out? That's not what's happening. And This trial has been so, it has taken everything that the Israeli leadership has said, which, I mean, almost every statement the leaders in the cabinet said are all war crimes. And it all came out. The presentation of the South Africans was brilliant. It was devastating. And the poor guy, the British lawyer that they had answer it, I mean, he couldn't even find some of his papers at some points, and he couldn't keep going. So it was like very weak. And so now the question is, which is an important thing that happens, just like our elections, just like our systems that are not functioning. The big test here is, I think, I mean, the case is closed, and this is genocide, and there will be consequences. But now the question is, will the system that is not functioning well allow this court case to be implemented? It's judgment. So we'll see. Um, and another major thing, huge thing, is what's going on in Germany right now. Thousands and thousands of trucks and tractors, and joined by the Poles, joined by in the Netherlands, soon to be joined by a lot of French, soon to be joined, as I predicted in the past, the Italians and a lot of Europeans. These governments, the reckoning of the EU is at hand. The reckoning of NATO is at hand as well, given the things that they have been doing by proxy in Ukraine. Ukraine is going to be defeated this year. Russia is going to absorb back into the Russian world all the provinces, and this experiment, except for the Western Ukrainians, and this experiment in independence for Ukraine is going to finally be exposed for what it is. It is an artificial nation. I mean, I'm not judging it. I'm just stating a fact, and history is going to prove it right. You have a nation that had all these people forced to live in it before it was a nation, when it was just a Soviet Socialist Republic. A lot of people were from land grabs like Western Ukraine, Lenin forcing all the Donbass Russians and Crimea, and then Khrushchev forcing the Russians in Crimea to be a part of Ukraine. We've never been a part of Ukraine. I mean, this is not how nations are born. Nations are not born because people are forced by other nations to throw themselves into a big group and then find themselves all in the ethnically, culturally diverse people that never asked to be part of this thing called Ukraina, which means borderland. I mean, your country's name is borderland. Can a country be called a frontier? I mean, and so even the name shows that this is not working. And so then you get one group of nationalists that believe they should rule all the other people there. This is not going to work. I've been talking about this since before 2014 when all this happened. Ukraine will break up because this is unnatural. These these people have not consented to live, the once 32 million people who live there. Now it's down to 22 or even less. They did not consent to be there. All those men that left and didn't want to join in the armies, good. It reminds me of something that Ruth Montgomery used to talk about through her channeling books. She talked about how I'm going to write something about this, maybe in the 2024 thing. I'll talk about it a bit. I'll introduce her prophecy, because she had these guides that gave her prophecies, and some of them pretty accurate, some of them not. But it was an interesting read. I learned a lot from processing what she was doing in the 90s and 80s. But she talked about there'd come a time where there'd be a lot of peace, because there'd be a whole generation of people who just wouldn't be interested in going to war. They just won't. They will literally be the people who said, what if somebody declared a war and nobody came? Well, these people are here, whether they are the incarnates returned from the 100 Years' War. That's what she thought. Frankly, there were not enough people living and dying in those 100 years to have such a big impact. So even when I was reading, I said, well, that's just mathematically not, even if they're coming back from there, I think it's a bigger area they're coming back. I mean, I'll tell you that one of the reasons why the Gerald Ford steamed away from Hezbollah's coastline is that they're 600 sailors short of an effective crew. The British are decommissioning ships because they can't crew them. The United States is beginning to do the same because recruitment in the annals of military history, recruitment has never been this bad in the West. And I'm glad, frankly. If there'll come a time if we have to fight in wars again, then people will stand up, but they'll stand up to fight because they have to. They're not going to go. I mean, this is the karma, the reckoning of all these 32 years of the American hegemonic power, where all those brave young men and women of America went to fight for corporate interests, not for this country's needs and defense. And that's why so many of them are messed up, because they were fighting a fraud. They were fighting and dying as the Zionists want, Netanyahu and all, they've been wanting America to fight and die destroying Iran. They got away with it with Iraq. They tried to pull them in Syria because, I mean, I understand a small country if it's got a big dumb friend who's ready to stick its face right in the middle of a meat grinder. It's yeah, okay. I got my big dumb friend. We're small. We have a lot of powers and stuff. It'd only take a few atomic bombs to wipe us, or 2,000 Shahab missiles from Iran to wipe us off the face of the earth. So we can't attack Iran, and can't attack Syria, and you can't really effectively take out Saddam Hussein. So we got our big dumb friend, the United States, to go there. Okay, I'll go get him. Oh, you say that Bin Laden was in cahoots with Saddam. All right, I'll go. I won't question that because I'm hero worship all you folks in Israel, and just go stumbling off into adventures. It gets a lot of Iraqis killed and a lot of Americans killed and wounded and damaged, war psychosis and all kinds of things. Well, 30 years of that has sunk in, and I I agree with the men and women who are saying, screw this. I'm not going out there. That's people waking up. I said, I'd rather actually pursue. Why don't we fight this problem where I can't make enough money to have what my parents had? Why are we giving it all to Israel? Why are we giving it all to Ukraine? I mean, this is a beyond partisan issue. Every American, whatever their identity is in politics, why aren't we spending more time just making a budget that defends this country and not defends a corporate cabal that wants to put a weapon everywhere in America, in the world where the sun never sets upon it, and a budget that is killing us economically. I mean, people want to badmouth all the addicts in the streets and all of that is going on. Well, that's what happens when you send all the money off to these adventures, when you start fighting the wars that your so-called friends can't fight, but you're too stupid to see that, and you're just looking the other way because you're just trying to get through your life. But so another reckoning is the American people need to return to their responsibilities for this, because I will speak ill of you and myself. We have not done our part that the founding fathers and citizens of this country always did. Always make the people you send to Washington always afraid of you, not the other way around. Now they don't, they're not afraid of us. You create in Europe a technocratic dictatorship where the people have no voice. You have this new aristocracy in Brussels, the EU aristocracy, the EU Parliament, that literally don't give a hoot about you. It's Versailles has been rebuilt in the Tower of Babel, that round building that looks like the Tower of Babel. It's all round and partly unconstructed, just like the Hermanus Bosch painting. I think somebody had a real sense of humor with design that thing. Those truckers that are stopping things happening in Berlin all across that, this is the beginning as Pluto moves away from supporting the establishment and more towards supporting a revolution to reform the establishment, which is the big thing that's coming. This year is the shift. This year is where that starts happening. And I know as a lot of people feel very powerless that this whole way the world is kind of being shut down, that the elites are literally trying to take our freedoms away, our humanity away, to kind of turn us into serfs. Yeah, they really want to do that. But here's the good news. This happened before in a smaller way. It happened when Pluto started its transit in the birth of America. That was the peak of the aristocratic world as it was at its peak at that time. They were warring against each other. They were all not just one, but they had control over the plebs, the lower classes. But a middle class started to emerge in Europe and Britain and in the British colonies in America. And they like this new cash cow. Hey, there's these people are industrious. They're giving us more money. We can build more palaces. But at a certain point, the people in the middle classes then said, no, you're taking too much of the wealth. You've forgotten we even exist. You don't care about us, you hate us. You'd rather see us die or starve and stuff. And God damn it, they rose up then because that's what this energy in Pluto is starting to do now between 2024 and especially peaking in 2034 to 36 when the Pluto return of the French Revolution is on. But this will be much faster and much more of this happening because there's more of us, there's more intensity into it. So these globalists and people, these movements they are doing to suppress us, to shadow ban us, to try to control us is going to backfire. It might finally speaking ill to us citizens wake us up to our responsibility. And when we see our mistakes of letting our governments be overtaken over time by people who don't care about us, who don't honor our constitutional rights, it's just not a left or right thing. This is for everybody. So this begins in this year. And what I see is going to be the repeat of what happened 248 years ago. Right when the aristocracy was at its peak, when Klaus Schwab and his characters are in Davos at their peak, their era is done. It's all downhill for them now. And it's all beginning to be a potentially uphill for mass movements of individuals in group to a humanitarian change. Now it's going to be sometimes violent. It's going to be, this is travail. Destruction and violence has its part in existence. You can't have creation without it. Every creation destroys something. And some of the people who want to be identified with the past, they become the food for that destruction, the food for the moon, as Gurdjieff used to say. So, this is a process that is ongoing and it's just beginning. So that's an important reckoning that is coming. Another reckoning is economic. It's already on, started last year, but now we're going to see the world really making a shift away from the American hegemonic US dollar, weaponized dollar. And what's happening is 3/4 of the world are already rapidly moving away, but they're going to move a lot faster because around the end of February, I hope I'm wrong, but the pattern is there. Whenever the EU government people and Joe Biden and his administration say they're not going to do something, they really protest too much, and then down the line, they do it. Right now, all the thinkers and economic people, even in this PlayStation financialized economy, which does not make anything, it just speculates. Even they're saying to the Biden administration, and they're saying it to the European leaders, don't take that frozen Russian central bank money and literally rob it and use it. If you do, the rest of the world, a huge majority of the world, by the way, we're under 1 billion of that world. And there's another 7.5 or nearly seven and over 7 billion people who are turning away from us. If that goes through, it'll be the end of the credibility of 500 years of Western economics and coin and money. The world will turn away from the dollar, from the euro. The world will turn away from us, create a alternative system of money based on a currency that will not be anyone's national currency, so it cannot be dominating. That currency will be a transactional currency that allows all the other currencies to use it as the bridge to do commerce with other sovereign nations. The global South and Asia are done with us in the West. Don't worry about Russia invading Europe. They are done with us. We're not worth one life being lost for conquering them. So they've moved to the east and to the other greater part of the world. They're expanding their commerce into Africa, like with China. And this it kind of puts aside all this American Puritanism where this is another reckoning. This whole thing of where we walk into people's nations and tell them they should have a democracy like we do. We're ignorant, arrogant bastards who don't even know the backstory of why the Chinese are doing their form of democracy, why the Russians are doing their form, which is different from ours. We don't care. But we are out there like loudmouth ignoramuses preaching upon them that they got to be like us. And you know what? When the dollar had them by the balls, they had to listen because America's dollar, if you didn't listen, America would do something to you. I mean, a great example of that is what happened to my master when he'd been kicked out of 21 countries after the ranch folded in Oregon. And so he started to go to different parts of the world to meet his people. And we looked like we were going to end up in Uruguay. And the Sanguinetti, the president, we were getting along. And I'm saying, well, I have to learn Spanish because we're going to end up in Uruguay, and we'll rebuild our commune city there. And it was a wonderful things were going on. And then the CIA plane came in, and then the people that were go-betweens with us came to Osho and our people in Punta del Este, the East Point. That's where he was doing his discourses and like crying. It was like saying, "We're sorry, the CIA's come. We were just about to give him a permanent resident visa in Uruguay, and they said, no, you have to leave. We don't want you to leave. But the Americans have come in and said, if we don't kick the Bhagwan out, he's called Bhagwan then. If you don't kick him out, you're all the donations, all the money we've been giving you, well, now you have to pay it back." So the power of money has always been America's military. It didn't have to put armies and raise the American flag, all like Britain and Germany and France and all their colonies. Our colony was the buck. Our colony was an invisible empire, but far more efficient in keeping people down. Well, Saudi Arabia ended that last year when MBS pulled the dollar away from being the commodity to keep the US dollar bonds alive, which means the dollar is beginning to lose its control on the world. And there's such a positive release that's going on outside of the West where we live in there. People are like, they can't hardly believe this is finally happening, that you mean now we're going to actually come together as nations and try to solve our problems and not be under control of one unipolar hegemon. Does that mean that we're now more a community where I have to, I have to live with my neighbors and find common ground? I have to stop my border disputes between China and Kashmir and India. So that's got to get worked out. And now it can get worked out because we're not under the boot of the United States buck. You mean now we can just leave each other alone about what's going on in our household of a nation and just let us work it out. And then if people have a better idea, They live by example in their country rather than you should live like us Americans. We're the greatest nation in the world. We're an exceptional nation. Well, yeah, I know. You know what? Certain people who use exceptionalism, like Adolf Hitler, like Benjamin Netanyahu, it's a fascist idea. And so, these people, if you're exceptional, that means you're above the law, you're above morality. You do not see people as equally unique. You see people as instruments of control. And all that ugliness, which is so un-American, is going to blow back. And the dollar this year is going to rapidly lose its control to run the show. And frankly, you're already seeing it. I mean, the American Navy stopped building logistical boats, enough boats to these destroyers that sent 100 Tomahawks and now another 100. I think by the end of the week they're going to all have to pull up and leave and steam all the way out of Aden up through the Persian Gulf and into Dubai. That's the nearest place where they can pack up some more missiles, come back, steam back for 2 weeks, come back to Yemen, fire them off in a few days, and then get out of Yemen again. It looks weak because it is weak, and the world is not afraid of us anymore. The Yemenis are not afraid of what's going on. They've been surviving a US-backed genocidal war against themselves since 2015, and they won the war, and Saudi Arabia had to back off. Now, and it's because the dollar isn't there to crush. That was always the thing. You couldn't you could see all these injustices. Everybody was seeing it for decades, but it's like sanguinary. You can't have Osho in your country, or you have to pay up all the debts from all the money we've given you to help improve your country, which is just a system of bribery and control. And guess what? When I heard that, I was in Seattle, and when we heard that Osho had to leave, on the very same day, I'm seeing President Sanguinetti on the news in the Oval Office with Ronald Reagan, glad handing him, and it was just announced that because of our great relationship with Uruguay, we're going to delay the payments down another 10 years. And I looked at my mom; she's a Sannyazin disciple too, and I looked at her and we laughed. It's like, oh, that's why Osho got kicked out. In my own personal life, seen with consequences to my life, have seen how the US dollar is used against the rest of the world. It was used the same way against my world. So can't do that now. If we were kicked out of America now, we could probably build our commune in Uruguay and they just, who cares? The world is turning away from the United States, and as far as me speaking ill of the United States, it's the best thing that could happen for us, because nothing's more burdensome for a country than being imposed as a policeman upon the world when it's not, when the world hasn't asked it to be. Being an empire is a terrible burden for this country, and when it finally collapses, and it begins mainly in this year, the economic crashes and stuff that will come from it, Americans, the reckoning is that you have to spend not beyond your means anymore, and you better vote out all those people in government who don't get that. Ramaswamy, who is one of the candidates in the Republican Party, he has a very interesting idea. He says, the first thing he's going to do if he's president is because he has the power as president to do this, mass firing of all the bureaucrats that have been involved in all this graft and stuff like that. Now, I mean, in part, I like that, but I'd like to grab that guy and say, Vivek Ramaswamy, who are you going to replace them with? Have you got the plan who have you vetted who are going to fill their shoes and do their work according to the Constitution. You can't just blowing it up is not I mean Ramaswamy is having a Greta Thunberg moment. Oh no, just shut down all the reactors. Just shut down all the industry because it's bad, it's evil. And then when we're down to medieval serfs, we're going to somehow change the industry without power. That's like, come on, get a brain. So I hope I'm going to try to reach him and say, look, I keep saying this online and stuff. Look, you can't blow things up. You have to already have something to replace it. You have to start saying, you can't do it right away, but you have to do this in installments. You've got to refine the replacement. So don't blow it all up in the first day. The government will not function because it's full of people like this. This is going to take time. I mean, that's why Vladimir Putin's was so successful in taking over time the oligarchic control that the US established in Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union as the gatekeepers for all this stealing of Russian resources, privatizing the Soviet system so that millions of people died who are no longer, because, well, we're free market and your socialist programs that are giving pensions to the old who built the Soviet Union, most of those people died or committed suicide. It's not talked about, but millions of Russians died from neglect, from a system that was just brutally capitalistic. It's me. Good luck with you. I'm going to make it. Whatever you do, you do. And the Russians were taking this on to extremes through their oligarchs. And Vladimir Putin, it took him 20 years. That's why I'm not for term limits, except every election. You can get voted out every 2 to 4 years. I also think the system has to be changed, that we cannot have a situation where we have a brain dead president for 4 years. This is the weakness of our system. The Constitution will need to be updated. It's interesting that Irene Hughes and other American prophets in the 1800s and her in the 20th century, she saw a revolution coming in 2026. Way back, she was talking about that in the 60s, and that where a new constitution would be created. Well, one of the things that needs to be looked at is we need to have a vote of no confidence for governments. Just like the parliaments of the world that, you get elected, it's 4 or 5 years. But if you've got a brain dead president, clearly his brain is not up to the job, even in the first year. And now it's really beyond the pale now. You have to have a vote of no confidence. We have the 25th Amendment. That actually could have stopped this, but the problem is that that would just replace that person with Kamala Harris, who the other weird thing too is there's a woman that the deep state has picked to be their perfect vehicle. And so you just watch the person that the deep state wants to become president is Nikki Haley. And I watched how she was changing her debates, and she started to sound like she was just even doing the woke globalist agenda. Suddenly, she was like speaking as if she had a earbud, and Klaus Schwab is talking to her. You will own nothing, and you will be happy and eat some bugs. Um, she started to be Schwabby, and I said, what is going on here? And actually, Ramaswamy, he picked up on it. He's actually the main people who opened my eyes. He's saying, no, she's being picked. She's she's I mean, when I watch her, she's even more stupid than Kamala Harris, but she's like the perfect channel for the deep state. Whereas Kamala is, I think one of the reasons why I don't want to touch her is that she really thinks I'm the president, I can do whatever I want. Um, Nikki Haley is a team player. She came into government really like bankrupt, and she's come out of government a multi-millionaire. So, you know, you see the grift here. And so if she's paid enough, she'll tote anybody's line in the deep state. And so watch her. She's what I'm hoping is that she is so idiotic that hopefully people will just go, I'll go for that. It's really sad. When's that glass ceiling is never going to be broken by women if we don't see more intelligent women represent their sex in our politics, because the people that are the Hillary Clintons, the Nikki Hellys, I call her Helly. She's a little Helly, you know. We're just ready to go to nuclear war with Russia. You know, let's do it, boom. You know, and Kamala Harris. I speak ill of the women of our country. Do not let such women represent you. Otherwise, you're falling right into the cliches, the dingbats, the over emotion, all the cliches that go with women that are not true. Well, stop putting these cliches into power. So, you know, you got to air things out. So speaking ill is not a bad thing in this theme of tonight. I mean, it's so that's the economy. We're going to have big changes with that. But what's going to happen is this greatest depression is going to hit the West a lot more than it will the rest of the world, less rest of the world. And what I hope will happen is people will start saying, you know what? It's like what used to happen in America. People in the troubled world around America when it was just starting and getting growing, well, people kind of looked over and said, wow, God, America, it's kind of a place I want to be there. You know, that's like, you know, that it's happening. It's going to happen big time over the next years. A whole lot of people in this country are going to end up moving to Russia and living as citizens of Russia, because frankly, it's a similar thing. If you actually see what's going on in Russia, Russia's in a pretty good state. It is, I mean, what if you watch mainstream news, you're lost to that reality. But if you actually look at alternative media, you're going to see over the years that the Russian economy is surging, it's booming. They do have a strong democracy. They don't do computerized voting. It's all you have to show up at the polling place. There are cameras everywhere. You have a ballot that's a paper. It can be recounted and preserved. There was one incident that the U.S. News brought up, I think 5 years ago. There was actually this one incident. They couldn't find more, but there was one incident where there was this gal on the camera taking ballots and screwing around with them in a Russian. She was immediately arrested, and that was stopped. Now, why didn't we do that with people? Droves of people. I mean, I saw the footage of it. They should be arrested. This is not totalitarian. This is defending your democracy, like Russia does. I mean, Vladimir Putin has never, he was appointed by Yeltsin. He didn't want the job. So he was like there, and then he was elected only by a slight majority. I mean, I've watched the elections all these years in Russia. They do have solid elections. It is a democracy. It is a Christian nation. It's not a communist nation anymore for decades. It's not the Soviet Union anymore. It's clean. The cities are beautiful. They have so much work that they have to actually hire people coming in from the Uzbekistan and other places to do the work because there's full employment. I mean, if you know how to go into this world of internet and open source, you can put yourself right in the middle of a red square right now and see what's going on there live. And or in Petersburg or other places or Novosibirsk or something, you can see that things have changed. If you've been a Russia washer, as I have been for a long time, I've never seen Moscow more clean and beautiful, and St. Petersburg. And all the cities are starting to look like that. I was watching some contacts. Patrick Lancaster is one of the best correspondents I've been watching since this war began. He's an American expatriate, has a wife and children in the Donbass region, which has been constantly shelled by the Ukrainians on the civilians in the cities and stuff. It's all documented. Anyway, he one time took a break with his wife and kids, and they spent a week in Rostov, which is not far from there. And I was amazed what Rostov looked like, and Astrakhan. And, cities have never looked so good. Russia has never, in its entire long history, been more prosperous and more together than it is now. And a lot of people are immigrating. Wouldn't that be an irony? Rather than people going to America, people start immigrating to Russia because it's kind of filling the void by example that America once was. We can be that again, but we just have to be Americans, not imperial Americans. It's so not American for us to be uh, marching around and controlling people and stuff. It's just so un-American. Again, we've lost our way, but that happens in lives of individuals as it does in the collective lives of citizens of nations. Nations, if they live long enough, they lose their way. They need an intervention. And this intervention is not forced upon us. It is caused by us. The intervention is nobody wants to play with us in the sandlot anymore because we're not good players. And, we've become the cat shit in the sand. So, just drop in there. And nobody wants to play with the cat shit anymore. So stop being cat shit in the sand and people will play with you. It's as simple as that. And I'll leave it at that since what hour is this? This is the second hour that I finished. So this will be the diet Hogue marathon, not 3 hours. So this is the Diet Pepsi Hogue marathon.
Right.
We just did 2 hours.
Well, so the individuals that are watching this, please click the link that's below this video, and that link will take you to John's website, and you can subscribe, you can purchase his books, you can do readings. So please click the link and help John, provide more great information and perspective. Every time we do these recordings, I learn something. And
Me
I
too.
think that and I think you bring up some really good points. Not everybody has to agree all the time, and you can learn from people.
Unnatural. If everybody
Yeah,
agrees with you, what a boring
yeah.
world that would be. You wouldn't learn anything.
Right, right, right. So I think the problem in today's world, everything is, like these shows that are like American Idol.
Yeah.
Everyone's competing, and everyone has to have an enemy, and everyone has to have their hero, and you
Infantile.
can't. Yeah, and it's just so when you were talking, just really brief before we go, but when you were talking about Haley, and I immediately went back to a couple decades ago what it was like during the election. Even for the primaries, there
Mm,
weren't a lot of candidates for either Democrats or for the Republicans.
true.
You know, and now
An army.
yeah, no, it's like Game of Thrones. It literally is Game of Thrones. So
Without Diana Rigg and
there's this attack and destroy mentality.
so
And I think,
infantile.
yeah. Well, there's a feedback. There's this feedback loop with mainstream media. They need that to get the ad revenue from the campaigns.
It isn't working
So,
anymore. The mainstream media is dying really fast now. That's one other reckoning that I'll just throw in there. It's amazing to see how many people are coming over to the media I'm involved in, that you're involved with.
mm,
The free speech, tell it like it is. You don't have to agree with me. Networks. We're the
mm.
alternative network. They want to shut us down, but you can't. The more you try to shut us down, the more new Rumble and other things come up. Can't
And
shut this.
that's what you're seeing with Tucker.
Yeah.
What
Oh,
he's
amazing
now
what
in. Yeah,
Tucker did.
yeah,
And Elon Musk. He's
yeah.
blown a hole through all those public, the public areas of the internet that were privatized. Now I wish Facebook, I wish there was somebody out there who had $42 billion to buy Facebook and kick out all the NATO censors from the Atlantic Council that banned me, destroyed my scene on Facebook. Take out that fishy looking guy who owns it, retired, not in violence. But just take the Zuckerberg out of there and just because he sucks. And Facebook could be a great place for debate. It once was. I had such good time, but then all this censorship started happening. And now we have to also, and then Google and all those people, they also have, the FBI offices that are still in Facebook and Google also need to be kicked out like they were in X, in Twitter. Because so I'm hoping that Elon, I mean, he's very brave. He really, for all his faults, he is sincerely trying to make this work. So if we have things that he's doing that we don't like, we can always talk to him. He sometimes responds. It's like with Jason Hinkle, and we're going back and forth, and it was very productive. So, viva la messiness of democracy. Vive la mess. It's the governments that are efficient and clean are fascist. The trains work on time. Yes, but you have no soul in such nations. It's just very dark. Because freedom is life. Look, people are messy.
Mhm.
Relationships are messy. It's one of the things of life that cleaning them up often leads to another extreme.
Okay, so well, thank you very much for coming back onto the channel, John, to share your thoughts, and we'll do this again very soon. And again, everybody that's watching, please click the link and go to his website and sign up for his periodical.
Yeah, and love to do readings for you if you have a need. It'll be fun because it's all this energy. You could just be
Right. And it's
really,
it's the very beginning of the year, so you can
yeah.
get an insight in what's
I
going
have
on.
I have available time. It's so this is the time to think about it if you haven't thought about it before.
All right.
Just click on that Hogue reading and put in Hogue reading as a subject line. You don't have to write any unless you want to, but I'll see that in all the thousands of emails I get every day. I'll see that subject and then I'll talk to you and then we'll set up a time and then we'll have a journey together. It's lots of fun.
Okay, very good. So thank you for coming back onto the channel, John.
Thanks,
And
Paul. You're
and
wonderful.
just,
You're one of my best portals to the world.
that's good. So you
You're
got to
very
wave back.
brave.
Well, the thing is that, we need people that are outspoken, but also, that are scholarly and have different perspectives. And, we can learn from people that have different perspectives.
Yeah,
This idea,
that's what I
this,
do.
yeah, I mean, what I've been noticing on channels lately, individuals are only putting on people that they 100% agree with,
Yeah,
or they want to 100% take them down. So
yeah,
it's
it's
and the
binary.
thing, yeah,
It's totally
and the thing
binary.
is, is that the solution is in the middle. We all need
It
to learn
is.
from each other, and
Middle is the
we.
public grounds where we come and debate things, and that's what I love what Tucker's doing. I mean, he's talking to all kinds of people now that he's Tucker Unleashed.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. Okay, so you got to wave goodbye.
Bye, everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. All right, let me stop the recording here.